Welcome back to the Big Match Podcast. It's the big one. India versus New Zealand in the ICC Champions Trophy Final. After weeks of thrilling cricket, it all comes down to this. India has been dominant throughout the tournament, but they know all too well that being favorites doesn't guarantee the trophy. Just ask any Indian fan still haunted by that World Cup final in 2023. Meanwhile, New Zealand has built a reputation as the ultimate knockout stage warriors, always ready to spoil the party. So, will India finally get their hands on another ICC trophy, or will the Kiwis pull off another upset?
Oh my goodness, Alicia. What a tournament it's been. And now we're down to these two incredible teams. You know what they say. When the going gets tough, the Kiwis and Indians get going.
Right? And we've got so much to unpack today. Like, literally sitting on a goldmine of cricket analysis here. Should we tell our listeners what they're in for?
Absolutely. First up, we're going to walk you through both teams' fascinating journeys to the final. Then we'll dive into their head-to-head record, which, trust me, has some really interesting patterns.
And don't forget those juicy player matchups. I mean, Gill versus Henry, Kohli versus Santner. It's like cricket's version of the Avengers, isn't it?
You're not wrong there. We'll also break down the tactical side of things, really get into the nitty-gritty of how these teams might approach the final. Plus, we've got our special spotlight on the players who could be absolute game changers.
And because we know how crucial conditions are in Dubai, we're covering everything about the pitch and weather too. Plus, any last-minute team news that could shake things up.
It's gonna be a roller coaster of cricket analysis, folks. And trust me, by the end of this show, you'll be totally ready for what might just be the most epic Champions Trophy final ever.
All right, let's kick things off with how these teams made it to the final. And Keith, India's journey has been nothing short of spectacular, hasn't it?
Oh man, spectacular doesn't even begin to cover it. India has been, absolutely crushing it. They're the only unbeaten team in the tournament, and get this. They started by absolutely demolishing Bangladesh, with Shami picking up a 5-4 and Gill smashing an unbeaten century. Talk about making a statement.
And then there was that massive clash against Pakistan in Dubai. I mean, that was just vintage Kohli, wasn't it?
You're reading my mind here. That chase was like watching a masterclass in batting. Kohli, with that cool as a cucumber 100, it's like he was batting in his backyard. And don't even get me started on how Shreyas Iyer supported him with that crucial 50. It was just chef's kiss. Perfect cricket.
But what really caught my eye was how they handled New Zealand in the group stage. Especially after being 30 for
That game was straight out of a thriller movie, I tell you. India looked like they were in serious trouble, but then, boom, Shreyas Iyer comes in with that magnificent 79. Axar chips in with 42, Hardik with 45. And suddenly they've got a fighting total. And then, Varun Chakravarthi happens. 5 wickets. Game over. Thank you very much.
Speaking of New Zealand, though, their journey's been pretty interesting too, hasn't it? Starting with that win against Pakistan.
Oh yes. The Kiwis have been like those silent assassins, you know what I mean? That opening match against Pakistan was absolutely brilliant. Will Young and Tom Latham both getting hundreds, setting up that massive 320. And then, just when everyone thought they might struggle in the semis against South Africa...
The Ravindra Williamson show.
Exactly. Those 2 centuries in the semi-final were just like watching poetry in motion. Rachin Ravindra and Kane Williamson putting on that massive partnership, getting them to 362. I mean, who saw that coming? And then Santner with those 3 crucial wickets. It's like they saved their best cricket for when it really mattered.
So basically, we've got the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object in this final?
You could say that. India's perfect record against New Zealand's ability to pull out magical performances in knockout games. This is going to be absolutely epic.
Now, moving on to something really interesting, the head-to-head record between these two teams. Keith, I've been looking at the numbers, and they're pretty fascinating.
Oh my goodness, yes. And let me tell you, this is like one of those classic rivalries that just keeps getting better. We're talking about 119 matches between these two giants since 1975. And here's the kicker. India's got a pretty decent edge with 61 wins to New Zealand's 50.
But what really caught my attention is India's recent form against the Kiwis. They're on quite a roll, aren't they?
Roll? It's more like a steamroller. India's won their last 6 ODIs against New Zealand since January 2023. It's like they've figured out some secret cheat code or something. And remember that group stage match in this tournament? That 44-run win was just superb. Classic India dominance.
But you know what's interesting? New Zealand seems to have this knack for turning things around in big tournaments.
Oh, you're hitting the nail right on the head there. It's like that old saying from The Godfather. Just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. You know what's really wild? The Kiwis actually won this very tournament back in 2000. And get this, it's their only ICC men's one-day international title. Meanwhile, India's got 2 Champions Trophy titles under their belt, 2002 and 2030.
I've noticed something about their recent matchups, though. The toss seems to play a huge part.
Absolutely. And speaking of recent matchups, let me throw this little nugget at you. In their last 5 encounters at ICC events, it's been this crazy back-and-forth battle. But what's really fascinating is how both teams have completely different approaches. India's been all about that spin dominance lately, while New Zealand, they just keep finding ways to bounce back with their pace attack.
Let's dive into the key player matchups for this final. And oh boy, there are some really juicy ones to look at.
You bet. And let me tell you, this is like watching a chess match where all the pieces are grandmasters. The first matchup I'm absolutely buzzing about is Gill versus Henry. I mean, this is totally going to be like that first scene in any superhero movie where the 2 strongest characters just go at it.
Matt Henry really had Gill's number in that group stage match, didn't he?
Totally. Henry's been like this tournament's Terminator, leading the wicket charts with 10 scalps. And the way he set up Gill in their last meeting, that in-dipper was just pure poetry. But here's the thing. Gill isn't the world's top-rated ODI batter for nothing. He's probably been watching those videos on repeat. You know what I mean?
I've got my eyes on another fascinating battle. Kohli against Santner. That one could be crucial.
Oh man, now we're talking. This is like watching Batman versus Superman, but on a cricket field. Kohli's been absolutely phenomenal in this tournament, but Santner, this guy's got this incredible knack of building pressure. You know what's fascinating? Kohli sometimes has this teeny tiny weakness against left-arm spin early in his innings.
Speaking of pressure battles, what about Williamson versus Indian pace attack?
That's like trying to crack a safe that keeps changing its combination. Williamson's just come off that brilliant 100 in the semis, but facing Shami in this form, whew, Shami's picked up 8 wickets in 4 matches since his comeback, and his seam position has been straighter than a geometry teacher's ruler.
Don't forget about young Rachin Ravindra against Hardik Pandya.
Now that's what I call the battle of the next generation. Ravindra's been batting like he's playing cricket on PlayStation, averaging 75 in the tournament. But, and this is a big but, Pandya's got this uncanny ability to break partnerships. Remember how he got Ravindra in the group stage? That extra bounce, that awkward length. It's like he's got this secret blueprint to tackle the youngster.
You mentioned the Dubai pitch earlier. How do you think these matchups might play out, considering the conditions?
That's where it gets super interesting. The Dubai pitch has been slower than a snail in traffic, which means these one-on-one battles become even more crucial. It's not just about skill anymore, it's about patience, adaptability, and who blinks first.
All right, let's talk tactics. And there's something really fascinating about how these 2 teams approach their cricket, isn't there? The way they used those spinners in the group stage against New Zealand was pretty impressive.
Totally. And you know what's fascinating? Dubai pitch has been taking turn from day one, and that's exactly why India's strategy of choking teams with spin has worked like a charm. They've basically turned Dubai into their fortress.
But New Zealand's got their own tactical approach, haven't they? Especially with their pace attack.
Absolutely. The Kiwis are like that student who's done all their homework and then some. They've got this beautiful mix of Henry's precision, Santner's guile, and let's not forget how they use Phillips as this surprise package in the middle overs. It's like they've got a plan A, B, C, and probably the rest of the alphabet too.
I've noticed they tend to use their bowlers in shorter spells. That seems pretty effective.
Yeah, that's been their masterstroke. It's like they're following that old boxing saying, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. They keep rotating their bowlers, never letting batsmen settle. And, have you noticed how they always seem to have this extra fielder exactly where the batter wants to hit? That's not luck, that's pure homework.
The pitch conditions in Dubai, how do you think that's going to affect their strategies?
Well. Now, that's where it gets super interesting. The pitch has been playing like an old vinyl record, lots of turns and the occasional unexpected bounce. India's played all their games here, so they're like the local experts. But the Kiwis, they've shown they can adapt faster than a chameleon in a rainbow factory. Tomorrow's game is going to be all about who reads these conditions better in the first 10 overs.
Okay, time to shine the spotlight on some key players who could make or break this final. And there are some absolute superstars to watch out for, aren't there?
Oh my days, we're talking about some serious cricket royalty here. Like, let's start with King Kohli himself. The man's been in absolutely ridiculous form this tournament, averaging, like 80-something in successful chases. He's basically cricket's answer to a GPS, always finds the right path home.
And that semi-final knock against Australia was something else.
It was like watching a masterclass in chase management. You know that scene in Matrix where Neo sees everything in code? That's Kohli in a run chase. And get this, he's got 6 centuries and 9 50s against New Zealand in ODIs. That's not just form, that's like having a PhD in Kiwi demolition.
But speaking of masters, Kane Williamson seems to have found his groove at just the right time.
Absolutely spot on. That century against South Africa in the semis was like watching someone paint the Mona Lisa with a cricket bat. The way he and Rachin put on that 164-run partnership. Pure poetry in motion. And you know what's scary? He actually looks better now than he did at the start of the tournament.
We can't ignore Varun Chakravarthy, though. Talk about making an impact.
Oh man, this guy's been the tournament's biggest plot twist. Like, imagine bringing in a mystery spinner who's played just one ODI before and he goes, bam, 5 wickets against New Zealand. He's like that magician who keeps pulling rabbits out of increasingly impossible places. And on these Dubai pitches, he's more dangerous than a chocolate cake at a weight loss camp.
What about Matt Henry? His fitness is still a bit of a question mark after that diving incident.
You're right. And that's going to be one of the biggest subplots of this final. He's currently sitting pretty at the top of the wicket takers list. And that 5 for against India in the group stage was absolutely crucial. If he's fit, well, let's just say India's top order might need to pack an extra set of batting gloves. They're going to need them.
All right, Keith, we've covered every angle possible. Time for the million-dollar question. What's your prediction for tomorrow's final?
You know what? I've been wrestling with this one like a cat trying to catch its own tail. But I'm going to stick my neck out here and say India's got this. And I'll tell you why. It's not just about their unbeaten run, it's about how they've won each game differently.
They haven't relied on just 1 or 2 players, have they?
Exactly. It's like they're running this cricket Avengers operation. One day it's Shami with the ball, next day it's Kohli with the bat, then suddenly, bam! Chakravarthy shows up like Doctor Strange with his mystery spin. But, and this is a big but, if there's one team that could upset the apple cart, it's New Zealand.
Those Kiwis do have a knack for big tournaments, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. They're like that quiet kid in class who ends up acing every test. And with Williamson and Ravindra in the form they're in. But I'm going with India, with Kohli scoring a century and, wait for it, Chakravarthy taking 4 wickets.
And that's a wrap on our preview of the ICC Champions Trophy Final. It's all set to be an epic showdown between India and New Zealand, and we can't wait to see how it unfolds. Will India shake off the ghosts of 2023 and claim the trophy, or will the Kiwis once again rise to the occasion in a big final? Let us know your predictions in the comments. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our post-match analysis. We'll be back right after the final to break it all down. See you then!